A president followed a judge home from court one afternoon because something felt wrong in his gut. What he discovered in a secret meeting that night would expose a corruption network so deep that it would destroy 6 judges, send a billionaire to prison for 25 years, and give 300 families back the land that was stolen from them. But before I tell you this incredible story, I need to ask you something. What time is it where you are right now? Which country are you watching from? Nigeria? Kenya? Ghana? United States? Drop a comment below and tell me where you are. And if you believe in fighting corruption, hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. We are building an army of people who refuse to stay silent when powerful people destroy the lives of ordinary citizens. Now let me tell you what happened in Burkina Faso. President Ibrahim Traoré could not stop thinking about the letters. 3 letters in 1 month, all from the same village, all saying the same thing. The judge is corrupt. The judge takes bribes. The judge rules against poor farmers even when the law is clearly on their side. The first letter, he read it and put it aside because many people write complaints when they lose in court. Sometimes they are just angry. Sometimes they cannot accept that they were wrong. The second letter came with details. Names, dates, descriptions of secret meetings between the judge and the businessman's lawyers. President Traoré paid more attention to this one. But it was the third letter that changed everything. The third letter was written by a grandmother. She was 73 years old. Her handwriting was shaky, but her words were strong. She wrote that her family had farmed the same land for 5 generations. Her grandfather cleared that land. Her father worked that land. Her children grew up on that land. Now a rich businessman and a corrupt judge were forcing them off. She wrote that if the courts cannot protect ordinary people, then what is the point of having courts at all? When President Traoré read those words, something broke open in his chest. He had not fought for his country's freedom just to see rich men buy justice. He had not risked his life in the revolution just to see poor families crushed by corruption. So he did something that no president had done before. He checked the court schedule. He found out when the next hearing would be, and he decided to go see for himself. But he did not go as a president. He went as an ordinary man. He wore simple clothes, a plain shirt and trousers, a cap pulled low over his face. He told his security team he needed the afternoon alone. They did not like it, but they obeyed. He drove himself to the courthouse in Ouagadougou in a regular Toyota that could belong to anyone. Nobody recognized him. That was exactly what he wanted. The courtroom was not impressive. Paint was peeling from the walls. Old fans turned slowly overhead, barely moving the hot air. About 30 people sat on wooden benches. Most were from the village. Farmers, wearing their best clothes. Women with babies tied to their backs. Old men with faces weathered by years of sun and hard work. These were people who worked the land with their hands. On the other side of the courtroom sat the businessman and his 3 lawyers. Everything about them screamed money. Expensive suits that probably cost more than a farmer earned in a year. Leather briefcases, gold watches. They talked quietly among themselves, and sometimes they laughed, like they were at a social gathering, not a court hearing that would decide if 300 families kept their homes. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Judge Ouedraogo was a tall man in his 52s, wearing the black robes of his office. He had gray hair and a serious face. He looked exactly like what people imagine when they think of a judge. Dignified, respectable, trustworthy. But President Traoré did not look at the judge's robes or his serious face. He looked at the judge's eyes. He watched how the judge looked at the farmers with barely hidden impatience, like they were wasting his time. He watched how the judge nodded slightly to the businessman's lawyers, like he was greeting old friends. The hearing began. The village lawyer stood up. His suit was old and did not fit well. You could see the shirt was worn at the collar. But he spoke with passion. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. This land belongs to the community. We have documents going back to 1923 showing continuous farming. We have records from the colonial period. We have papers from after independence. We have tax payments going back decades. The law protects community farming rights. The judge looked bored. He glanced at the documents without really reading them, just flipping pages like he was looking through a menu at a restaurant he did not want to eat at. Then, the businessman's lawyer stood up. This man's suit probably cost more than the village lawyer earned in 6 months. He spoke smoothly, using complicated legal language designed to confuse. Your Honor, while the plaintiffs present old documents, they fail to understand modern property law. My client purchased development rights through proper legal channels. He has investment plans that will bring jobs and progress to the region. We cannot allow outdated claims to block economic development. President Traore felt his jaw tighten. Development rights. The village lawyer had not mentioned anything about development rights because this was new information, probably brought up to confuse the issue and make the farmer's case look weak. The village lawyer stood again quickly. Your Honor, we were never informed of any development rights sale. The community was never consulted. That is enough. Judge Ouedraogo interrupted sharply. His voice was cold. I have heard sufficient arguments. I will review the materials and issue a ruling next week. But, Your Honor, the village lawyer protested. We still have witnesses to present. We brought people to testify. We were promised a full hearing. I said that is enough, the judge repeated. The hearing is concluded. Court dismissed. The farmers looked at each other in confusion and fear. They had traveled hours to get here. They had brought elders to testify. They had prepared their case carefully. Now, they were being dismissed after barely 20 minutes, like their lives meant nothing. President Traore watched it all. He watched the judge gather his papers without looking at the farmers. He watched the businessman shake hands with his lawyers, smiling confidently like the case was already won. He watched the farmers file out slowly, their shoulders slumped, their hope dying. The grandmother who had written the letter sat in the front row. She was crying quietly. A younger woman, probably her daughter, held her hand and whispered something, probably trying to comfort her. But what comfort is there when you know the system is rigged against you? President Traore felt anger burning inside him, but he kept his face calm. He kept his cap low. He walked out with the crowd. Then he did something else no president had done. He waited. He sat on a bench in the courthouse garden under a tree, pretending to read a newspaper. But his eyes never left the courthouse door. 1 hour passed. Then Judge Ouedraogo came out. He had changed from his robes into an expensive suit. He walked to the parking area and got into a black Mercedes, an expensive car for a judge whose official salary was modest. President Traore walked quickly to his Toyota. He followed the Mercedes from a distance, staying back far enough that the judge would not notice. The judge drove through Ouagadougou's afternoon traffic. He stopped once at a bank. President Traore watched from across the street. The judge went inside carrying a briefcase, the same briefcase he had taken into court that morning. Empty. 10 minutes later, the judge came out. The briefcase looked heavier now, fuller. The president's military instincts kicked in. A briefcase that goes into a bank empty and comes out full. That told a story. The judge got back in his Mercedes and continued driving. He left the main roads. He drove toward the wealthy part of the city, where big houses sat behind high walls and gates, where government ministers and successful businessmen lived, where ordinary people never went. The Mercedes turned into the driveway of a large house. The gate opened automatically. The judge drove inside. President Traore drove past without slowing down. He noted the address in his mind. Then he circled the block and parked on a side street where he could see the back wall of the house. And he waited. Patience was something he had learned in the military. In the revolution, patience often meant the difference between success and failure, between living and dying. So he sat in his Toyota as the afternoon heat pressed down. He sat as the sun moved across the sky. He sat as sweat ran down his back. 20 minutes later, another vehicle arrived at the house. A Range Rover, even more expensive than the judge's Mercedes. It pulled up to the same gate. The gate opened. The Range Rover went inside. President Traore took out his phone and photographed the license plate. Then he made a quiet call to his chief of intelligence. a man he trusted completely. "I need you to check a license plate for me. Tell no one else about this. No one." He read out the number. His intelligence chief knew better than to ask questions. He simply said he would call back within the hour. President Traoré continued waiting. The sun moved lower. The afternoon heat began to ease slightly. People walked past on the street, going about their normal lives. None of them knew their president sat in a Toyota watching a house where corruption was probably happening right at that moment. His phone rang. The intelligence chief's voice was careful, like he understood this was serious. "Sir, that vehicle is registered to Amadou Zerbo." President Traoré knew that name. Everyone in Burkina Faso knew that name. Amadou Zerbo was one of the richest men in the country. He owned construction companies, import businesses, mining operations, and he was always involved in land deals. Big land deals where small communities somehow lost their land and Zerbo's companies somehow gained it. "Is this the same Zerbo involved in that village land case?" the president asked, though he already knew the answer. "Yes, sir." The case being heard by Judge Ouedraogo, the president thanked him and hung up. Now the picture was becoming clear. The judge was meeting with the businessman whose case he was supposed to decide, and the judge had visited a bank first, carrying a briefcase that came out heavier than it went in. This was not just suspicious. This was obvious corruption. The only question was whether he could prove it in a way that would stand up in court. The sun set. Streetlights came on. Mosquitoes began to bite, but the president ignored them. He had spent nights in the bush during the revolution. He had waited in far worse conditions than this. An hour passed, then another. Lights were on in the house. He could see figures moving past windows, but could not make out details. Finally, near 9 p.m., the gate opened. The judge's Mercedes came out. The judge was alone. He drove away, looking relaxed, almost happy, like a man who had just concluded good business. President Traoré faced a choice. Follow the judge home or wait to see if anything else happened at this house. He decided to wait. The judge was not going anywhere. He could investigate him tomorrow. But this house might reveal more secrets tonight. 30 minutes later, his patience was rewarded. Another vehicle arrived. A government car with official plates. A man in a suit got out. In the streetlight, President Traoré recognized him. Director Kabore from the Ministry of Land Affairs, a man responsible for approving land transfers and development permits. The president took more photos. He documented the time. He sent another encrypted message to his intelligence chief. Check if there are any land permits pending approval for Zerbo's companies. The answer came back in minutes. 3 major permits, all pending final signature from Director Kabore. Everything was falling into place now, like pieces of a puzzle. A businessman who wanted land. A judge who ruled on land disputes. A government official who approved land permits. All meeting together in secret. This was not just one corrupt judge. This was a network. This was a system. And suddenly, President Traoré understood this was much bigger than one case. How many villages had lost their land to this system? How many families had been pushed off farms their ancestors had worked for generations? How many grandmothers had cried in courtrooms while corrupt judges ignored their pain? He took more photos. He documented everything. He noted every vehicle that came and went. By midnight, the meeting seemed to end. The government official left. Then another businessman the president did not recognize. Then, finally, Zerbo himself came out. He stood by his gate smoking a cigarette, looking very pleased with himself. A man who thought he was untouchable. A man who thought his money and connections put him above the law. A man who had no idea the president of Burkina Faso had just spent 6 hours watching him. President Traoré started his engine and drove home slowly, his mind already working through what came next. When he reached the presidential residence, his security team was surprised and worried to see him driving himself. "Sir, where have you been? We were concerned." "I am fine. I needed to drive alone tonight." He went straight to his private office. He did not sleep. He sat at his desk and began making calls. Secure calls on encrypted lines to people he trusted absolutely. People who had fought beside him in the revolution. People who valued justice more than money. Colonel Sawadogo, his chief of intelligence. The head of the anti-corruption agency. He told them what he had seen. He sent them the photos. He explained his suspicions. Every person reacted with the same anger and determination. But they all said the same thing. We need more proof. Photos of cars at a house are not enough. We need evidence of money changing hands. We need recorded conversations. We need documents. President Traoré agreed. So over the next 2 weeks, he launched a secret investigation. Colonel Sawadogo put surveillance on 3 men: Judge Wedraogo, businessman Zerbo, and Director Kabore. The president used only people he trusted completely, former revolutionaries who would die before betraying him. They monitored phones. They followed movements. They documented meetings. And what they found was even worse than the president had imagined. In the past 3 years, Judge Wedraogo had ruled on 23 land dispute cases. In 19 of those cases, he ruled in favor of businesses against villages or small farmers. And in 14 of those 19 cases, the businesses were owned by or connected to Amadou Zerbo. 14 cases. That meant approximately 300 families had been displaced from land their families had farmed for generations. 300 families, fathers, mothers, children, grandparents, forced off their land, crops abandoned, homes left behind, lives destroyed, all so one rich man could get richer. The surveillance teams discovered Judge Wedraogo received regular deposits to a bank account in Togo. Small amounts, never enough to trigger automatic investigation. But over 3 years, the total was nearly 200 million CFA francs, almost $350,000, a fortune for a judge whose official salary was maybe 1/10 of that. Director Kabore had a similar account in Côte d'Ivoire, and the surveillance teams recorded phone conversations. The judge and Zerbo speaking carefully, but the meaning was clear. The matter we discussed is proceeding as expected. There should be no obstacles. Excellent. My people will show their appreciation in the usual manner. The arrangement has always been satisfactory. It was not a direct confession, but combined with the bank records and the pattern of rulings, it painted a clear picture. Then, Colonel Sawadogo discovered something that made everything even worse. Judge Wedraogo was not the only corrupt judge. Zerbo met with 5 other judges over 2 weeks. All of them handled land cases or commercial disputes. This was not 3 corrupt men. This was a corrupt system. Multiple judges on one businessman's payroll. But before making arrests, President Traoré wanted to do one more thing. He wanted to visit the families who had lost their land. He wanted to hear their stories directly, so he and Colonel Sawadogo drove to a poor neighborhood on the edge of Ouagadougou. They wore civilian clothes. They drove an unmarked car. They found a family named Ilbudo who had lost their farm in a land case decided by Judge Wedraogo 2 years ago. The Ilbudo family lived in a compound with thin metal walls, 8 people in 3 small rooms. When President Traoré arrived, they did not recognize him. He was dressed simply, and he spoke gently. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. We are investigating land cases." "Can you tell us what happened to your family?" The father, Francois, was a man in his 42nds, with hands calloused from farm work. We had 15 hectares. My grandfather cleared that land. My father farmed it. I farmed it. We grew millet, sorghum, vegetables. We were not rich, but we had enough. We had our dignity. His wife Miriam continued. Then men came with papers. They said a company bought development rights. They said we had to leave. We went to court, Francois said. His voice was breaking with emotion. We had documents. Community elders testified. Everyone knew that land belonged to my family. What happened in court? President Traoré asked quietly. The judge barely looked at our evidence. He listened to the company's lawyers talk about development and economic growth. Then he ruled against us, gave us 2 weeks to leave. Miriam wiped tears from her eyes. That was our home. My husband's father is buried on that land. My children were born there. Now we sleep on the floor in this place." The grandmother, sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Her voice was strong despite her age. "That judge is a wicked man. He sits in his fancy car and nice house. He does not care that we sleep on the floor. He does not care that my great-grandchildren go to bed hungry sometimes. He sold his soul for money." President Traoré felt the anger burning in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "What happened to your land after you left?" "Nothing," Francois said bitterly. "That is the worst part. They said they needed it for development. 2 years later, it just sits empty. No development, no jobs. They just wanted to take it from us. What would you do if you could get your land back?" Francois looked at him with tired, hopeless eyes. "That is a dream that will never happen. Men like us do not win against men like them. What if I told you someone is working to expose these corrupt judges?" The grandmother leaned forward. "Who would do that? Everyone knows the judges are corrupt, but nobody does anything. The government does not care about people like us." President Traoré looked at her directly. "What if the government does care? What if someone at the highest level is paying attention?" Something in his voice made them look at him more carefully. Colonel Sawadogo pulled out his phone and showed them an official photo of President Traoré in his military uniform. "Do you recognize this man?" They looked at the photo. Then they looked at the man sitting in their humble home. Francois's eyes went wide with shock. "That is President Traoré. And who do you think is sitting in front of you?" Miriam gasped and started to stand, but the president raised his hand. "Please sit. I did not come for formality. I came to listen. I came to learn the truth." The grandmother began crying. "You came to our home. You, the president. I came because what happened to your family is wrong, and I am going to fix it. But I need your help. When we take these corrupt men to court, I need families like yours to tell your stories. Will you do that?" "Yes," Francois said without hesitation. "Yes, we will tell everyone what they did to us." President Traoré visited 4 more families that day. Each story was the same. Land taken, lives destroyed, justice denied. That evening, he made his decision. He called a meeting of his most trusted advisors: the Chief Justice, the Attorney General, the head of the Anti-Corruption Agency. He laid out everything: the surveillance evidence, the bank records, the phone recordings, the testimony from families. The Chief Justice was horrified. "This is a stain on the entire justice system. It is not your fault," the president said, "but it is our responsibility to fix it." The Attorney General studied the evidence carefully. "This is strong. We can build criminal cases against all of them." Colonel Sawadogo spoke up. "We have identified 6 judges, 12 government officials, and 4 major businessmen, including Zerbo. When you arrest a judge," the president said carefully, "people will accuse you of attacking judicial independence." "Let them," he replied firmly. "A corrupt judge is not independent. He is a criminal wearing robes." Over the next week, they built their cases carefully. They made sure everything was legal and proper. They prepared arrest warrants. They assembled evidence. They coordinated teams. Then one evening, Colonel Sawadogo came with urgent news. "Sir, one of our surveillance teams was spotted. Zerbo has increased his security. He might be preparing to destroy evidence or flee the country." "Then we move now," the president decided. "Tomorrow at dawn." Dawn broke over Ouagadougou. Across Burkina Faso, 200 soldiers and police moved into position. President Traoré stood in the command center. He picked up the radio. "The men we are arresting today betrayed our people. They sold justice. They destroyed families for profit. Today we show them that no one is above the law. Go." At Judge Wedrogo's house, officers knocked hard on the gate. "Open this gate. We have an arrest warrant." The gate opened. They found the judge in his bedroom getting dressed. "What is this?" the judge shouted. "What is the meaning of this? You are under arrest for corruption, fraud, and abuse of office." The judge's face went pale. "This is a mistake. I am a judge. You cannot arrest me." The warrant was signed by the Chief Justice. Get dressed." At Zerbo's compound, the businessman tried to run to his garage where he kept cash and false passports. But officers were already there waiting. "Going somewhere, Mr. Zerbo?" He froze. For the first time in his life, his money and connections could not save him. Director Traoré was caught burning documents in his office. Officers put out the fire and saved the evidence. By 7 a.m., all 22 people were in custody. By afternoon, the entire country knew. President Traoré held a press conference. The whole nation watched on television and radio. "Today we arrested 22 people on charges of corruption. Among them are 6 judges, 12 officials, and 4 businessmen. These people betrayed our nation. They turned our courts into markets where justice was bought and sold. They destroyed 300 families so rich men could get richer. For too long, people believed the wealthy could act without consequences. Today, we prove that wrong. In Burkina Faso, no one is above the law." A journalist raised his hand. "Mr. President, what about judicial independence? Are you not interfering with the courts?" "A corrupt judge has no independence," the president replied firmly. "A corrupt judge is not serving justice. He is serving himself. By arresting corrupt judges, we are protecting true judicial independence." Another journalist asked about the families who lost land. "Every case will be reviewed thoroughly. Where we find corruption, the rulings will be overturned. Families will get their land back. That is not a promise. That is a guarantee." That evening, President Traoré returned to the Ilbudo family. He did not call ahead. He just knocked on their metal gate. When Francois opened it and saw the president standing there, he was shocked. "Mr. President, please come in." The whole family gathered. The president smiled at them. "Judge Ouedraogo was arrested this morning. He will stand trial. Your case will be reviewed, and you will get your land back." Mariam began crying tears of relief and joy. The grandmother took the president's hands, in her old weathered hands. "I said the government did not care about people like us. I was wrong. Forgive me. There is nothing to forgive," the president said gently. "As long as I am president, your voices will be heard." The trials began 2 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. Judge Ouedraogo was found guilty of corruption, fraud, and abuse of judicial office. He received 20 years in prison. Amadou Zerbo was convicted of corruption, fraud, and illegal land acquisition. He received 25 years. His companies were seized. His personal wealth was confiscated to compensate victims. Director Traoré received 15 years. The other judges received sentences ranging from 10 to 18 years. All 22 defendants were convicted. Not one was acquitted. But President Traoré knew punishment was not enough. He had to reform the system so this could never happen again. He announced new laws. All land cases would now be decided by panels of 3 judges, not 1. This made it much harder to bribe the court. All court decisions would be published online where citizens could read them. Transparency would prevent corruption. He created an independent anti-corruption court specifically for cases involving government officials and judges. He increased judicial salaries by 40% to reduce the temptation of bribes. But any judge caught taking bribes would be banned from ever practicing law again and would face criminal prosecution. He established free legal aid for poor families in land disputes. Never again would people lose their land because they could not afford lawyers. He created a public land registry using blockchain technology. Every land transaction would be recorded permanently and publicly. 3 months after the arrests, the Ilbudo family traveled back to their 15 hectares. When Francois stepped onto his land for the first time in 2 years, he fell to his knees. He grabbed handfuls of soil and wept. His children ran across the fields laughing and shouting with joy. Mariam walked to a tree where her father-in-law was buried. She knelt at the grave. "For 2 years I could not visit you," she whispered. "Now we are home." The grandmother, that strong old woman, stood in the middle of the land and raised her hands to the sky. "Thank you, God. Thank you, President Traoré. Justice has come." Over the next year, 127 families got their land back. Lives that had been destroyed were rebuilt. Children who had dropped out of school went back. Families who had been sleeping on floors moved back to their farms. One evening, President Traore sat in his office. On his desk was a folder containing letters from families thanking him. He kept one photograph on his desk. It showed him hugging the grandmother from the Ilbudo family. Her face in that photo showed pure peace. Colonel Sawadogo entered with the final report. "Sir, we prosecuted 34 people total, all convicted. We recovered 2.3 billion CFA francs. 127 families regained their land. Corruption in land cases has dropped by 60%. The illegal mining operations on stolen land have been completely shut down." President Traore looked out his window over Ouagadougou. "Colonel, when I followed that judge from court, I just felt something was wrong. I trusted my instincts." "Your instincts saved 300 families, sir." "No," the president said quietly. "The law saved them. Justice saved them. I just made sure the law was actually enforced. That is leadership." The president turned back to his desk. "The work is not finished. Corruption does not sleep. We must stay vigilant." "Then we stay vigilant, sir." President Traore sat down and picked up another letter from a citizen reporting suspected corruption in a different government ministry. He began reading carefully, because the fight against corruption never ends. It requires constant attention. It requires courage. It requires leaders who remember they serve the people, not themselves. So let me ask you something right now as you watch this video. Do you think your country needs leaders like President Traore? Leaders who will disguise themselves and go see the truth with their own eyes? Leaders who will spend 6 hours sitting in a hot car watching a house because they care about justice? Leaders who will visit poor families in metal shacks to hear their stories? Leaders who will arrest powerful judges and billionaires when they break the law? Drop a comment below right now and tell me. Tell me what you think about what President Traore did. Tell me if your country has corruption in the courts. Tell me if poor people in your country can get justice or if the system only serves the rich. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear your thoughts. And if this story inspired you, if it made you believe that change is possible, if it made you angry about injustice or hopeful about what good leadership can accomplish, then I need you to do something for me right now. First, hit that like button. Smash it. Every like tells YouTube to show this video to more people. Every like is a vote for justice. Second, subscribe to this channel right now. We are building a community of people who refuse to accept corruption as normal. We are bringing you more stories like this. Stories of courage. Stories of leaders who actually care about their people. Stories that prove justice is possible when good people refuse to stay silent. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. Third, and this is really important, share this video everywhere. Send it to your family WhatsApp groups, post it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, send it to your friends. The more people who see this story, the more pressure we put on corrupt leaders everywhere. Because corruption thrives in darkness. When we shine light on it, when we expose it, when we talk about it, that is when corrupt people start to worry. That is when change becomes possible. President Traore started with one letter from one grandmother. He ended by transforming an entire justice system, sending 6 corrupt judges to prison, sending a billionaire away for 25 years, and giving 127 families back their land and their dignity. What could happen if millions of people watched this video and decided they would no longer accept corruption in their countries? What could happen if you shared this video and it reached someone who has the power to investigate corruption in your country? What could happen if enough people demanded justice? Think about that. And remember, every subscription to this channel is one more person joining the fight against corruption. Every share is one more person learning that change is possible. Every comment is one more voice saying we will not accept injustice, so subscribe right now if you have not already. And stay tuned, because in my next video, I am going to tell you about a police chief who discovered that his own officers were running a protection racket, extorting money from small businesses. What he did next shocked the entire country and led to the arrest of 89 police officers. You are not going to believe how he exposed them. Until then, keep fighting for truth, keep demanding justice, keep believing that change is possible. Because it is. President Traoré proved it. And together, we can create a world where no grandmother has to cry in a courtroom while a corrupt judge ignores her pain. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and I will see you in the next video.